I should have known something was wrong when Julian insisted I wear the diamond necklace. Not the pearl choker my mother left me, but the heavy, ostentatious piece he'd had delivered that morning with a card that read, "Wear this tonight, trust me." At 27, I'd learned to recognize his staging, but I told myself this was different. Tonight was the Grand Opera House charity auction, the event that would cement our place among the city's elite families. A necklace wasn't worth questioning, not when everything I'd worked for hung in the balance. The Grand Opera House rose like a gilded monument to old money and older power. I'd authenticated paintings for half the families here, restored their grandfathers' portraits, returned their stolen masterpieces. Tonight, I wasn't the expert they called in secret. I was Julian's fiancé, finally worthy of being seen. My heels echoed across the marble lobby as the event coordinator greeted me with a smile that flickered too quickly. "Miss Chen, they're waiting for you. Your escort will take you to your seat." Your escort, not your fiancé. The phrasing should have been my second warning. He led me through the grand hall, and I felt the weight of every gaze that turned my way. The auction attracted the city's most powerful, museum board directors, gallery owners, private collectors whose fortunes were built on art and influence. I recognized faces from exhibition openings and appraisal appointments. 300 people easily, all draped in couture and jewels worth more than my family's gallery had ever earned. Julian stood on the stage near the podium, positioned for maximum visibility. But he wasn't alone. Victoria Hahn stood beside him in a gown that probably cost 6 figures, her family's corporate logo glinting on the auction program in everyone's hands. I knew her by reputation. Hahn Industries controlled half the city's luxury development projects. She'd been featured in Metropolitan Elite last month as the city's most eligible heiress. I stopped at the bottom of the stage steps. My portfolio, containing the authenticity certificates I'd prepared for tonight's featured pieces, suddenly felt like dead weight in my hands. Julian descended halfway, his expression carefully composed. "Rachel, thank you for joining us. Please, come up. We have an announcement." Thank you for joining us. Like I was a colleague, not the woman wearing his grandmother's engagement ring. "Julian, what's happening?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. He gestured toward the stage. "Everyone's waiting. This will only take a moment." I didn't move. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to walk out before whatever trap he'd set could spring. But pride locked my knees. I wouldn't run, not in front of 300 witnesses who already saw me as the outsider trying to marry up. Julian glanced at Victoria, who nodded with practiced sympathy. He cleared his throat, and a microphone amplified his voice across the suddenly silent hall. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight. As many of you know, I've spent the past 2 years building connections between our city's art community and its business leaders." He paused, letting the words settle. "But as I prepare to take on a greater role in my family's foundation, I've realized I need a partner who truly understands this world. Someone born into it, not someone trying to climb into it." The words hit like a physical blow. Around us, I could hear the sharp intake of breath, the rustle of programs as people leaned forward. "You brought me here to humiliate me." It wasn't a question. "I'm ending our engagement, publicly, cleanly." Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My engagement ring, the one I'd left at his penthouse 2 days ago when the antique setting had snagged my glove during a restoration. He'd promised to have it repaired. He opened the box, removed the ring, and held it up for the crowd to see. "Rachel, you're talented, ambitious, brilliant even, but you've always been so focused on proving yourself, on earning your place here. People might say you were with me for access, to my family's collection, to our network, to opportunities you couldn't reach on your own." Heat flooded my face. The necklace, his necklace, felt like a noose. "You think I used you?" "I'm simply stating how it appears. Your gallery went from foreclosure to hosting private viewings within 6 months of our engagement. People notice these things." Victoria stepped forward, her expression dripping with manufactured concern. "It's nothing personal, darling. Julian just needs someone who belongs to this life, not someone studying it from the outside." The crowd's whispers rose like a wave, drowning out my heartbeat, my breath, my ability to think. I stood frozen in the spotlight, literally and figuratively, as Julian turned to Victoria and took her hand. "I'm pleased to announce my engagement to Victoria Hahn. Our families have agreed to merge our foundations, and together we'll be leading the city's cultural renaissance." Applause erupted. Polite, calculated applause that felt like nails in my coffin. I don't remember leaving the stage. I don't remember walking through the hall or pushing past the valets. I only remember the rain hitting my face, cold and cleansing, as I stood on the Opera House steps with Julian's diamond necklace still locked around my throat like evidence of my own stupidity. If you've ever trusted someone who weaponized that trust, been destroyed in front of everyone who mattered, or wondered what you'd become if the world took everything from you, stay with me. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because what happens next in the rain will change Rachel's life forever. I should have known something was wrong when Julian insisted I wear the diamond necklace. Not the pearl choker my mother left me, but the heavy, ostentatious piece he'd had delivered that morning, with a card that read, "Wear this tonight. Trust me." At 27, I'd learned to recognize his staging. The way he'd position me at gallery openings, always slightly behind him, close enough to seem connected, but far enough to remain decorative. The scripts he'd feed me before dinner parties. Talk about the restoration process, not the art itself. Smile, but don't laugh too loudly. Be brilliant, but not more brilliant than him. But I told myself, tonight was different. The Grand Opera House charity auction was the pinnacle of the city's social calendar, the event that separated genuine elite from wealthy pretenders. This was the night Julian had promised would cement our place among the founding families. A necklace wasn't worth questioning, not when everything I'd worked for hung in the balance. The diamonds sat cold against my collarbone as my car pulled up to the Opera House. The building rose like a gilded monument to old money and older power, its facade illuminated by lights that made it glow against the darkening sky. I'd authenticated paintings for half the families arriving in their town cars and limousines. I'd restored their grandfathers' portraits, tracked down their stolen Monets, verified their Caravaggios. But tonight, I wasn't the expert they called in secret. I was Julian Whitmore's fiancé, finally worthy of being seen. My heels echoed across the marble lobby. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across walls hung with masterpieces on loan from private collections I'd helped build. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd touched more valuable art than most of these people would ever own, yet I was still the outsider. The event coordinator materialized at my elbow, a thin man in an impeccable tuxedo whose smile flickered too quickly when he saw my face. "Miss Chen, they're waiting for you. Your escort will take you to your seat." Your escort, not your fiancé. The phrasing should have been my second warning. I followed him through the grand hall, acutely aware of every gaze that turned my way. The auction attracted the city's most powerful: museum board directors, gallery owners, private collectors whose fortunes were built on art and influence. I recognized faces from exhibition openings and appraisal appointments. 300 people easily, all draped in couture and jewels that represented generational wealth I would never understand. Julian stood on the stage near the podium, positioned for maximum visibility. But he wasn't alone. Victoria Hahn stood beside him in a gown that probably cost more than my family's gallery earned in a year. Silk the color of champagne, diamonds at her throat and wrists that didn't look rented. Her family's corporate logo, a stylized lotus, glinted on the auction program in everyone's hands. Hahn Industries controlled half the city's luxury development projects. She'd been featured in Metropolitan Elite last month. The heiress redefining urban elegance. I stopped at the bottom of the stage steps. My portfolio, containing the authenticity certificates I'd prepared for tonight's featured pieces, suddenly felt like dead weight in my hands. Julian descended halfway down the steps, his expression carefully composed. Perfect posture, perfect Windsor knot, perfect mask. "Rachel, thank you for joining us. Please, come up. We have an announcement." Thank you for joining us. Like I was a colleague arriving for a meeting, not the woman wearing his grandmother's engagement ring. Julian, what's happening? My voice came out steadier than I felt. He gestured toward the stage, toward Victoria, toward the 300 witnesses now watching with the focused attention of an audience that smelled blood. Everyone's waiting. This will only take a moment. I didn't move. Every instinct I possessed screamed at me to leave, to walk out before whatever trap he'd set could spring shut around my throat. But pride locked my knees in place. I wouldn't run, not in front of 300 people who already saw me as the outsider trying to marry above her station. Julian glanced at Victoria, who nodded with practiced sympathy that never reached her eyes. He cleared his throat, and a microphone hidden somewhere amplified his voice across the suddenly silent hall. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. As many of you know, I've spent the past 2 years building connections between our city's art community and its business leaders. He paused, letting the words settle like dust. But as I prepare to take on a greater role in my family's foundation and in shaping the city's cultural future, I've realized I need a partner who truly understands this world. Someone born into it, raised in it, not someone trying to climb into it. The words landed like physical blows. Around us, I heard the sharp intake of breath, the rustle of programs as people leaned forward for a better view of my destruction. You brought me here to humiliate me. It wasn't a question. My hands had gone numb around the portfolio. I'm ending our engagement. Publicly. Cleanly. Julian reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, my engagement ring, the antique platinum setting his grandmother had worn. I'd left it at his penthouse 2 days ago when the vintage prongs had snagged my silk glove during a delicate restoration. He'd promised to have it repaired by his family's jeweler. He opened the box, removed the ring, held it up for the crowd to see, a tiny circle of diamonds catching the chandelier light like a noose catching sun. Rachel, you're talented, ambitious, brilliant even. You have an extraordinary eye for detecting forgeries. He said it like a compliment wrapped around a knife. But you've always been so focused on proving yourself, on earning your place here. People might wonder if you were with me for access, to my family's collection, to our network, to opportunities you couldn't reach on your own. Heat flooded my face. The diamonds at my throat, his diamonds, felt like a confession, evidence of every accusation he wasn't quite making directly. You think I used you? The question came out flat, drained of emotion I couldn't afford to show. I'm simply stating how it might appear. Your family's gallery went from foreclosure notices to hosting private viewings for the Vandermeer collection within 6 months of our engagement. People notice these things. Victoria stepped forward, her hand finding Julian's arm with the ease of long familiarity. It's nothing personal, darling. Julian just needs someone who belongs to this life, not someone studying it from the outside. The crowd's whispers rose like a wave, drowning out my heartbeat, my breath, my ability to form coherent thoughts. I stood frozen in the spotlight, literally and figuratively, as Julian turned to Victoria and took both her hands in his. I'm pleased to announce my engagement to Victoria Hahn. Our families have agreed to merge our foundations, and together we'll be leading the city's cultural renaissance. The Whitmore Hahn Initiative will transform how art and commerce intersect in this city. Applause erupted. Polite, calculated applause that sounded like nails being driven into a coffin lid. I don't remember leaving the stage. I don't remember walking through the grand hall or pushing past the valets who suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. I only remember the rain hitting my face, cold and cleansing, as I stood on the Opera House steps with Julian's diamond necklace still locked around my throat like a gilded leash I'd worn willingly to my own execution. Behind me, through the tall windows, I could see them toasting. Champagne flutes raised to Julian and Victoria's future, while my past dissolved in the rain. The necklace was too tight, or maybe I was finally suffocating on 3 years of making myself smaller, quieter, more acceptable to people who would never accept me. I reached for the clasp. My fingers were shaking too badly to work the mechanism. The diamonds sat heavy and cold, a weight I couldn't shed. That's when I heard the car. A black limousine pulled up to the curb, sleek and silent as a predator. The kind of vehicle that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew what it meant. The rear door opened, and a single black umbrella emerged first, unfurling against the rain. Then he stepped out. Even in the rain-blurred darkness, I could see the sharp lines of his face, the way his tailored black suit fit like a weapon. He moved with absolute certainty, each step deliberate, purposeful. When he reached the bottom of the steps, he looked up at me with eyes that held no pity, no sympathy, nothing soft. Only recognition, like he'd been expecting me, like he knew exactly what had just happened inside. Rachel Chen. His voice cut through the rain, accented but precise. I've been waiting for you. He held out the umbrella, not to me, beside me, creating a space for me to step into if I chose. Who are you? Kang Tae-jun. He said it like I should know the name, like it should mean something. It did. Even through my shock, I knew. The Shadow King, the man whose name appeared in no public records, but whose influence touched every gray space between legal and lethal in this city. What do you want? The same thing you do. His eyes flicked to the opera house, to the warm light and celebration inside. To make them bleed. I should have walked away, should have hailed a cab, gone home, locked myself in my apartment, and let myself shatter in private like a reasonable person. But reasonable people didn't get publicly destroyed at charity auctions. Reasonable people didn't stand in the rain with a stranger whose reputation was built on violence no one could prove. I don't know what you're talking about. The lie tasted bitter. My voice barely carried over the rain. Kang Tae-jun's expression didn't change. He simply stood there, holding the umbrella in the space between us, waiting. Patient as a predator that knew its prey had nowhere else to go. Julian Whitmore just announced his engagement to Victoria Han in front of 300 of the city's most influential people. He accused you of social climbing and using him for access. He turned your expertise into evidence of opportunism. Tae-jun's voice was clinical, precise. And you're still wearing the necklace he gave you like a collar. My hand flew to my throat. The diamonds were still there, cold and heavy. I'd forgotten. In all the chaos and humiliation, I'd forgotten I was still wearing his brand. Let me guess, Tae-jun continued. You authenticated pieces for his family's collection. You used your expertise to increase the value of their holdings. You probably worked for half your usual rate because he convinced you it was an investment in your shared future. Each word was a scalpel, cutting away the lies I'd been telling myself. You don't know me. I know Victoria Han's family is laundering money through art acquisitions. I know Julian's foundation is the perfect vehicle for it. Legitimate provenance, respected name, access to private sales that never see public scrutiny. He tilted his head slightly. And I know you're the only person in the city with the expertise to prove it. The statement hung in the rain-soaked air between us. Behind me, I could hear laughter drifting from the opera house. They were probably serving champagne now, toasting the perfect merger of the Whitmore legacy and Han Industries money. Why would you tell me this? Because 3 months ago, Victoria Han's family purchased a controlling interest in the warehouse district where your family's gallery sits. The building with your mother's name on the deed. Tae-jun reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document, somehow still dry despite the rain. Foreclosure notice, effective in 30 days. I'm sure Julian will offer to buy the property, at a fraction of its value, of course, out of the goodness of his heart. My hands were shaking as I took the document. The letterhead was real. Han Industries. Legal notice of intent to repossess. My mother had spent 20 years building that gallery, authenticating pieces for museums, teaching me everything she knew before the cancer took her. It was the last piece of her I had left. This isn't possible. The mortgage was paid off. It was. Then your fiancé convinced you to take out a loan against it 6 months ago. Do you remember? For renovations, he said. To make it worthy of hosting the Vandermeer collection viewing. Tae-jun's voice held no judgment, only facts. He forged your signature on the transfer papers. Victoria's family now holds the note. The rain soaked through my dress, but I couldn't feel it. I could only feel the weight of my own stupidity, my blind trust, my desperate need to belong to a world that was built on consuming people like me. "You could go to the police," Taejun said. "File a fraud claim. Spend years in court while Julian's lawyers bury you in motions and Victoria's family destroys your reputation completely. By the time you prove anything, the gallery will be demolished and turned into luxury condos." He paused. "Or you could let me help you." "Why?" The question came out raw. "Why do you care about any of this?" For the first time, something flickered in Taejun's expression. Not quite emotion, but something close to it. "Victoria's father has been using legitimate businesses to move illegal funds for the past 5 years. Art, real estate, venture capital, all clean on the surface, all poison underneath. He's expanded into territories that belong to me. He's challenged my organization's operations using legitimate business acquisitions as weapons. So, this is about turf. This is about power." Taejun's voice didn't rise, but the intensity behind it made me take a step back. "Victoria's family believes they can hide behind respectability while they encroach on what isn't theirs. They believe their legal structures make them untouchable." He looked directly at me, and I saw something dangerous burning behind that controlled exterior. "I need someone who can dismantle those structures. Someone who knows art authentication, provenance verification, the technical details that can prove their acquisitions are fraudulent." "You need me to expose them." "I need you to destroy them," he corrected. "Methodically, professionally, using the same expertise Julian used you for." The umbrella was still there, still waiting. A choice presented but not forced. "What do you get out of this?" I asked. "Victoria's family removed from the art market entirely. Their assets seized, their reputation destroyed, their ability to hide behind gallery openings and charity auctions eliminated." Taejun's voice was cold, final. "What do you get? Your gallery back. Your mother's legacy restored. Julian Whitmore's career destroyed when it comes out that he knowingly helped launder money through fraudulent art sales." It should have sounded insane. It should have sent me running. But all I could think about was Julian's face on that stage, the practiced sympathy in Victoria's voice, the applause that celebrated my humiliation. "And if I say no?" "Then you go home. You lose your gallery in 30 days. You spend the rest of your life known as the woman who tried to marry up and failed." Taejun's expression remained neutral. "Julian and Victoria will build their empire on top of everything you loved, using your work to legitimize their crimes." The rain fell harder. Inside the opera house, they were probably cutting the cake now, feeding each other bites while photographers captured their perfect moment. My mother used to say that art revealed truth, that a forgery could fool the eye, but never the careful examination of someone who knew what to look for. She taught me to see the invisible signatures, the inconsistencies, the lies hiding beneath beautiful surfaces. I'd spent 3 years not looking, not examining, believing the surface because I was desperate to belong. "What would I have to do?" Taejun stepped closer, bringing the umbrella fully over both of us. The rain stopped hitting my face, but I could still feel it soaking through everything else. "Meet me tomorrow, midnight, the old customs warehouse on Pearl Street." He reached into his jacket again and pulled out a business card, black with only a phone number embossed in silver. "Come alone, bring nothing. If you're ready to become someone they fear instead of someone they pity, I'll show you exactly how we'll make them bleed." He pressed the card into my palm. His hand was warm, steady, completely certain. "And Rachel?" He stepped back, preparing to return to the limousine. "Wear something you don't mind burning. That necklace needs to disappear." The car door opened. Taejun folded the umbrella with mechanical precision and slipped inside. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a vault sealing shut. I stood alone in the rain again, the business card growing damp in my hand, Julian's diamonds still locked around my throat. Behind me, the opera house glowed with warmth and celebration. Ahead, the limousine's taillights disappeared into the darkness like red eyes closing. I had 30 days before I lost everything. Or one night before I became something else entirely. My fingers found the clasp of the necklace. This time, they didn't shake. The customs warehouse on Pearl Street looked abandoned. Broken windows, rusted loading dock doors, graffiti covering brick that had probably been red a century ago. The kind of building the city forgot about, left to rot while glass towers rose 3 blocks away. I'd worn black. Simple dress, flat shoes, hair pulled back. Nothing I couldn't walk away from. The necklace was gone. I'd left it in a donation box outside a church. Let someone else carry Julian's weight. Midnight arrived with fog rolling off the water. I was early by 15 minutes, watching the building from across the street, looking for signs of life, of danger, of whatever waited inside. At exactly midnight, a door I hadn't noticed before opened. A man in a black suit, not Taejun, someone harder, older, gestured for me to enter. No turning back now. The exterior was a lie. Inside, the warehouse had been completely renovated. Concrete floors polished to a mirror shine, exposed brick sandblasted clean, lighting that was somehow both dim and perfectly placed. It felt like walking into a cathedral built for darker worship. The man led me through a corridor lined with doors I couldn't see behind. Our footsteps echoed. He didn't speak, didn't look back to see if I was following. He knew I would be. We stopped at an elevator, industrial, original to the building, but the control panel was new. Biometric scanner. He pressed his thumb to it, then stepped aside and gestured for me to enter alone. The elevator descended. I counted the seconds. 23. Deep underground, far below the waterline. When the doors opened, I stepped into a space that stole my breath. The office was carved from the foundation itself. Stone walls, but not rough, precisely cut, almost surgical. A massive desk dominated the center, made from a single piece of black wood I couldn't identify. Behind it, floor-to-ceiling glass looked into what appeared to be a vault. I could see paintings stacked in climate-controlled cases, sculptures on pedestals, artifacts that belonged in museums. Taejun stood by the glass, examining a painting. He'd traded the wetsuit from last night for something sharper. Black shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked more dangerous without the formal armor. More real. Caravaggio, he said without turning. The Vatican claims it was destroyed in the 1700s. It was stolen, hidden, sold 6 times in 2 centuries. I acquired it 3 years ago. He finally looked at me. Do you know why? I stepped closer, studying the painting. Even in the dim light, I could see the technique, the chiaroscuro mastery. Because it's priceless. Because it's proof. Taejun moved away from the glass, toward me. The man who owned it before me used it as collateral for a weapons deal. He believed its reputation made it untouchable, that no one would dare question his possession of it. He stopped 3 feet away. I took the painting. Then I took everything else he owned. The message was clear. Everything here was evidence, leverage, weapons that looked like art. You collect other people's secrets. I collect power. He gestured to a chair facing the desk. Sit. I did. The leather was expensive, broken in but not worn. Taejun circled to the other side of the desk, and the dynamic shifted immediately. This wasn't a conversation between equals. This was an interview. He opened a drawer and removed a file folder, placed it on the desk between us. Open it. Inside were photographs. My gallery, my apartment, me at work, at the grocery store, at the opera house 3 nights ago. Weeks of surveillance. You've been watching me. I've been waiting for the right moment. Taejun leaned back in his chair. Julian Whitmore has been useful to Victoria Hahn's family for 2 years. He authenticates their acquisitions, provides legitimate provenance, uses his foundation's reputation to clean their purchases. But he's sloppy, arrogant. He believes his family name protects him. And Victoria? Smart, ruthless. She understands how to weaponize legitimacy. Taejun's voice carried a note of respect I didn't expect. She saw you as a threat the moment Julian brought you into his world. Your expertise made you dangerous. She's been planning to eliminate that threat for months. The photographs made sense now. I wasn't random collateral damage. I was a target. Why didn't you approach me before he destroyed me publicly? Because you wouldn't have believed me. You were still in love with the fantasy of belonging. Taejun's eyes locked on mine. Now you're angry, humiliated, desperate. Now you're useful. The words should have stung. Instead, they felt like cold water, clarifying. He wasn't pretending this was about justice or righteousness. He needed a weapon, and I'd finally been sharpened into one. What exactly do you want me to do? Taejun pulled out another file. This one was thicker, filled with documentation. Acquisition records, provenance certificates, shipping manifests. Victoria's family has purchased 47 pieces of art in the past 18 months. Combined value, $300 million. I believe at least 30 of those pieces are forgeries or stolen goods with falsified documentation. You want me to prove it? I want you to examine every piece they own, document every inconsistency, build a case so airtight that when I choose to destroy them, there's no recovery. He slid the file across the desk. You'll have access to their private collections, their storage facilities, their records. As my fiancé, no one will question your presence. The word hung in the air like smoke. Fiancé. A public engagement, announced at the Metropolitan Gallery's winter exhibition in 3 days. You'll wear my ring, attend events at my side, play the role of the woman who traded up after Julian's betrayal. Taejun's voice was clinical, methodical. Victoria will see it as a provocation. Julian will see it as revenge. They'll both underestimate you, which gives you access. And when I'm done examining their collection, you'll testify. Federal investigators, museum boards, international art recovery agencies. You'll destroy their legitimacy completely. He paused. And I'll make sure your gallery is returned to you, free and clear. Your mother's legacy restored. Your reputation rebuilt. It was perfect. Clean. A transaction wrapped in the appearance of romance. What are the terms? Taejun opened another drawer. He removed a small black box and placed it on the desk. When he opened it, I understood why he'd called this a contract. The ring was massive. A black diamond the size of a marble, set in platinum so dark it looked like iron. Surrounding it were smaller diamonds, colorless, flawless, arranged in a pattern that looked less like decoration and more like armor. Absolute loyalty, Taejun said. You don't question my methods. You don't contact authorities without my permission. You don't break character in public, ever. You belong to me completely until the contract is fulfilled. And in return? Absolute protection. No one touches you. No one threatens you. Victoria's family, Julian, anyone who tries to hurt you answers to me. He picked up the ring, holding it between us. You'll live in my home. You'll have access to resources you can't imagine. You'll be untouchable. For how long? Until Victoria Han's empire is rubble and Julian Whitmore is forgotten. Taejun stood, walking around the desk. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I had to look up to meet his eyes. This isn't a romantic proposal, Rachel. This is a blood contract. Once you put this ring on, there's no walking away. You're mine until the debt is paid. He held out his hand. The ring sat in his palm, catching the light like a black hole made solid. I thought about my mother's gallery, about Julian's face on that stage, about 3 years of making myself smaller, quieter, more acceptable to people who saw me as disposable. I stood, held out my left hand. Taejun's fingers were steady as he slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd known my size, known I would say yes, known exactly how to weaponize my rage. The black diamond was cold, heavy. It felt like putting on shackles made of starlight. One more thing, Taejun said, his hand still holding mine. In public, we're madly in love, inseparable, the kind of couple that makes people uncomfortable with how obsessed we are with each other. His thumb brushed across the ring. "Can you do that?" I looked at him. At the careful control in his expression, the predatory stillness in his posture, the absolute certainty that he owned this moment. "Yes," I said, "I can do that." Something flickered in his eyes, almost like approval, almost like hunger. "Good." He released my hand. "The car will take you home. Pack everything you need. Tomorrow, you move into my home. In 3 days, we announce our engagement." He stepped back, creating distance again. "Welcome to your new life, Rachel Chen." The elevator doors opened behind me. I hadn't heard it arrive. I walked toward it, my hand heavy with the weight of the black diamond. At the threshold, I turned back. Tae-jun had returned to the window, studying his stolen Caravaggio. He didn't look at me, but I saw the set of his shoulders, the coiled tension that never quite left him. "Tae-jun?" My voice echoed in the stone chamber. "Yes?" "They're going to regret this." Now he turned, and for the first time, I saw him smile. It was sharp, dangerous, and absolutely genuine. "Yes," he said, "they are." The dress arrived at noon on the day of the Metropolitan Gallery's winter exhibition. Black silk that moved like liquid shadow, cut to skim my body without clinging, a neckline that dipped low enough to be dangerous. No jewelry except the black diamond on my left hand, which was the only statement I needed. Tae-jun's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building that didn't advertise its existence. No doorman, no lobby directory, nothing to indicate that anyone lived above the innocuous investment firm on the lower levels. I'd been here for 2 days, learning the rules of my new existence. Rule 1. His staff didn't speak unless spoken to, and they saw nothing. Rule 2. 3 rooms were off-limits: his office, the armory, and whatever lay behind the biometric locked door at the end of the east hallway. Rule 3. In public, I touched him constantly. Hand on his arm, fingers laced through his, head on his shoulder. We were obsessed with each other, couldn't bear separation, the kind of couple that made others feel like voyeurs. I'd practiced in the mirror, the way to look at him like he was oxygen, the way to lean into his space like I belonged there, the performance of infatuation. What I hadn't practiced was the reality of him. Tae-jun emerged from his bedroom at 7 sharp, and I understood why he'd chosen the dress. He wore black as well, a suit that probably cost more than a car, cut with the precision of a blade. No tie, white shirt open at the collar, exposing the hollow of his throat. His hair was styled back, revealing the sharp architecture of his face. We matched. Predators dressed for hunting. "Ready?" His voice was calm, but his eyes traveled over me with an assessment that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with strategy. "Yes." He crossed the space between us, close enough that I caught his scent, something expensive and dark, cedar and smoke. His hand found my waist, fingers spreading against the silk. "Remember," he said quietly, "you're madly in love with me. You can barely stand to be apart. When people look at us, they should feel uncomfortable, like they're intruding on something private." "I understand." "Do you?" His other hand came up, fingers tracing the line of my jaw, tilting my face up. It was clinical, educational, teaching me the choreography. "When I touch you like this, you don't pull away, you move closer." I did, close the distance between us until our bodies were nearly touching. His hand tightened on my waist. "Good." His thumb brushed across my bottom lip, and I felt my breath catch, not from desire, but from the intensity of his focus. "Tonight, Julian and Victoria will be there. They'll see you walk in on my arm. They'll see this ring. They'll realize their mistake. And then? Then we make them watch while everyone who dismissed you falls over themselves to gain your favor." His hand slid from my face to the back of my neck, proprietary and possessive. "You're not Rachel Chen, the art expert who got humiliated. You're Rachel Chen, my fiancé. That makes you untouchable." The word sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with cold. Tae-jun released me, stepped back, became distant again. "The car is waiting. The Metropolitan Gallery glowed like a jewel box against the night sky. Spotlights, red carpet, photographers clustered at the entrance. This wasn't just a winter exhibition. This was where the city's power brokers came to be seen, to make deals in front of priceless art, to prove they belonged to the most exclusive echelon. Our car pulled up to the curb. Through the tinted windows, I could see the crowd. Socialites, collectors, politicians, media. My hands wanted to shake. Taejun's fingers found mine. Breathe. I did. The door opened. Taejun stepped out first, and I watched the reaction ripple through the crowd. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Cameras swiveled. People recognized him, or recognized the danger he represented without knowing his name. He turned back, offered his hand. I took it. The moment my feet touched the red carpet, cameras erupted in a strobe of flashes. But I only looked at him. Let my expression soften. Let the performance begin. His arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me close against his side. We moved through the crowd like a knife through silk. People parted. Some stared. Others looked away quickly, suddenly fascinated by their phones. "Rachel Chen," a reporter called out, brave or foolish. "Is it true you're engaged to Kang Taejun?" I held up my left hand, let the black diamond catch the light. "Very true." "What happened with Julian Whitmore?" Taejun's hand tightened on my waist, a warning or a reminder. I smiled, the expression I'd practiced in the mirror. "I upgraded." Laughter from the crowd, but it had an edge. Nervous, uncertain. We kept moving. Inside, the gallery was a symphony of wealth and pretension. Champagne circulated on silver trays. A string quartet played in the corner. The featured exhibition was contemporary Asian art, pieces on loan from private collections across the world. And there, near the center of the main hall, stood Julian and Victoria. They hadn't seen us yet. Victoria wore red, bold, commanding attention. Julian stood beside her in his predictable navy suit, playing the part of the dignified philanthropist. They were holding court, surrounded by admirers and sycophants. "Now," Taejun said quietly, his lips close to my ear. "Let's say hello." We crossed the gallery floor. I felt eyes tracking us, conversations dying in our wake. By the time we reached Julian and Victoria, a circle had formed around them, and us, an audience. Victoria saw me first. Her expression flickered, surprise, then calculation, then something almost like fear when she saw Taejun. Julian turned. The color drained from his face. "Julian, Victoria!" Taejun's voice carried just enough to be heard by everyone nearby. "Congratulations on your engagement! Rachel and I wanted to offer our best wishes." Silence. The kind that felt like pressure building before an explosion. "Taejun," Victoria recovered first, her smile razor-sharp. "What a surprise! I didn't realize you frequented gallery openings." "I don't." His arm tightened around me, a gesture so possessive it bordered on claiming. "But Rachel has exquisite taste in art. I go where she goes." Julian's eyes fixed on the ring on my finger. I saw the calculation behind his expression, the attempt to understand what was happening. "Rachel," he said, and his voice was careful, controlled. "I heard you'd moved on. Rather quickly." 3 days, I agreed. My voice was steady, almost pleasant. Funny how fast things change when you finally see clearly. "Indeed." Victoria stepped closer, and I caught the assessment in her eyes. She was trying to understand the angle, the play, what Taejun wanted. "Your ring is stunning. Black diamond?" 20 carats, Taejun said. "It belonged to a Russian oligarch who made the mistake of underestimating my fiancé's value. I acquired it, along with the rest of his collection, when he learned that mistake was fatal to his business interests." The threat was barely veiled. The crowd around us had grown, drawn by the promise of drama. "How romantic!" Victoria's smile never wavered. "Love built on the ruins of others." "Not ruins," I said, and I let my hand rest over Taejun's heart, feeling the steady rhythm beneath my palm. Just correction. Some people don't appreciate what they have until someone else claims it. Julian's jaw tightened. Rachel! Excuse me. A museum director I recognized materialized at my elbow, his expression eager. Miss Chen, I was hoping I might have a moment. We're considering acquiring a collection of Song Dynasty ceramics, and I understand you're one of the few experts who can authenticate the provenance. Before I could respond, another voice joined in. Rachel, I'm from the Hartwell Museum. Yes, that Hartwell. We'd love to discuss your consulting services. Then another, and another. Within minutes, I was surrounded by people who hadn't returned my calls 6 months ago, who'd looked through me at parties, who'd treated me like Julian's decorative accessory. Now, they practically bowed. Taejun remained at my side, silent but present. His hand never left my waist, and every time someone spoke to me, I felt him watching them with the flat, emotionless gaze of someone cataloging potential threats. Julian and Victoria stood frozen at the edge of the circle, watching their world shift. The people who'd applauded Victoria's triumph now jockeyed for position around me. The social hierarchy they'd counted on had been rewritten in the span of 10 minutes. We should view the exhibition, Taejun said finally, his voice cutting through the chatter. The crowd parted immediately. As we walked away, I glanced back once. Victoria's expression was carved from ice, calculating. Julian looked lost, like he'd wandered into a play without knowing his lines. You did well, Taejun murmured when we were alone in a smaller gallery room. I didn't do anything. They're all terrified of you. They're terrified of what I represent. His hand slid from my waist to the small of my back, fingers spreading possessively. But they're drawn to you because they sense the shift in power. You're not trying to belong anymore. You already do. A waiter appeared with champagne. Taejun took 2 glasses, handed me one. Our fingers brushed, and he held my gaze as he raised his glass. To new beginnings, he said. To making them bleed, I corrected. His eyes darkened with something I couldn't quite name. Approval. Hunger. Recognition. To that, he agreed. We drank. And somewhere in the main gallery, I knew Julian and Victoria were realizing that the woman they'd dismissed had just become the most dangerous person in the room. Not because of the ring on my finger, but because of the man who'd put it there. The text arrived at 3 a.m. Get dressed. We have work to do. I'd been awake anyway, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Taejun's penthouse, watching the city sleep beneath a blanket of fog. The black diamond felt heavy on my finger, a constant reminder that I'd traded one cage for another, even if this one came with a better view. 20 minutes later, we were in the back of his car, cutting through empty streets. Taejun hadn't spoken since I'd emerged from my room. He sat across from me, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, studying a tablet with the focused intensity I was beginning to recognize as his default state. Where are we going? I finally asked. To give you what you asked for. He looked up, and in the dim light of the car's interior, his eyes were unreadable. You wanted to make them bleed. Tonight, you learn how. The car pulled into an industrial district I didn't recognize. Warehouses lined the street, most of them dark, anonymous. We stopped at one that looked like all the others. Corrugated metal, no windows, a single steel door. 2 men in black suits materialized from the shadows as we exited the car. They nodded to Taejun, didn't acknowledge me at all. One of them unlocked the door, and we stepped inside. The warehouse was cavernous, cold, lit by harsh industrial lights that threw sharp shadows across concrete floors. But what filled the space made my breath catch. Art! Everywhere! Paintings stacked against walls, sculptures on pallets, crates marked with shipping labels from auction houses and galleries across the world. Easily 100 pieces, maybe more, worth tens of millions of dollars. This is Victoria Han's private storage facility, Taejun said, his voice echoing in the vast space. She acquires pieces through legitimate channels, stores them here for 6 months to a year, then sells them through private networks. The pieces never appear in public databases. The transactions leave no trail. I moved closer to the nearest painting, a landscape attributed to a minor impressionist. Even from 5 feet away, I could see the problems. Wrong canvas texture, brushwork too uniform, craquelure pattern inconsistent with age. This is a forgery. I know. Taejun came to stand beside me. I need you to prove it, document it, build a case that even Victoria's lawyers can't dispute. I turned to look at him. You broke into her warehouse. I own the building. She leases the space through a shell company. She doesn't know I'm her landlord. Something that might have been satisfaction crossed his expression. I've had access to this facility for 3 months. I've been waiting for the right person to tell me what I'm looking at. And if I'd said no to your contract? I would have found someone else, but they wouldn't have had your motivation. He gestured to the warehouse full of art. Most experts would see forgeries and report them to authorities. You're going to see forgeries and help me weaponize them. The distinction was important. This wasn't about justice. This was about leverage. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I'll need proper lighting, a magnifying glass, access to provenance documentation, and I'll need to examine every piece individually. You have 6 hours before the facility manager arrives for the morning shift. Taejun pulled a large equipment case from behind a crate. Inside, professional photography lights, examination tools, a laptop. Everything you need. I stared at him. You planned this. I plan everything. He checked his watch. 5 hours and 58 minutes now. I suggest you work quickly. I lost myself in the work. It was like being in a museum after hours, alone with pieces that revealed their secrets only to someone who knew how to look. The first painting was definitely fake. Modern pigments, artificial aging, provenance documents that referenced a gallery that hadn't existed in 1890. I photographed everything, documented the inconsistencies in detailed notes. The second piece was more sophisticated. A bronze sculpture attributed to a contemporary Chinese artist. The casting was excellent, the patina nearly perfect. But the artist's signature mark was wrong. Too deep, slightly off-center. A collector might never notice. I would testify about it in court. Taejun watched from a distance, sitting on a crate with his tablet, occasionally making calls in Korean that I couldn't understand. But every time I moved to a new piece, I felt his attention shift to me, tracking my process, cataloging my methods. By the third hour, I'd examined 20 pieces. 14 were forgeries or had falsified provenance. 6 were legitimate, but likely stolen, based on incomplete documentation. This is systematic, I said, straightening from examining a scroll painting. Someone is running an organized operation. They're mixing real pieces with fakes, using the legitimate acquisitions to legitimize the fraudulent ones. Taejun approached, looking at my notes. Can you prove it? In court? With proper forensic analysis and access to international art crime databases? Yes. I met his eyes. But that's not what you want, is it? I want Victoria's entire operation exposed, her reputation destroyed, her family's ability to use art as a vehicle for money laundering eliminated. He scrolled through my photographs. But first, I want her to know that I have this information. I want her to understand that I can release it whenever I choose. Leverage. Power, he corrected. Victoria believes she's insulated by legitimacy. She thinks that as long as the pieces appear authentic and the paperwork is clean, she's untouchable. He looked up from the tablet. You're going to prove she's wrong. I turned back to the warehouse full of art. In the harsh lighting, the paintings looked almost garish, their flaws obvious now that I knew to look for them. What happens when she finds out you have this information? She'll try to negotiate. Offer me something valuable in exchange for my silence. Taejun's voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. I'll refuse. She'll escalate, become desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. You want her to come after you. I want her to reveal her full network, everyone she works with, every connection she has, every illegal operation she's running. He stepped closer, and I caught that scent of cedar and smoke again. She'll try to destroy me, and in the process, she'll expose herself completely. That's dangerous. Yes. He didn't seem concerned. But you'll be protected. That's the contract. I looked at the ring on my finger, then back at the warehouse. Months of work from Victoria's organization, millions of dollars in fraudulent art, all of it about to become ammunition in a war I'd barely understood when I agreed to fight it. There's something else, I said, walking to a crate I'd noticed earlier. The shipping label was recent, 3 days ago. This just arrived. Want to guess what's inside? Taejun's expression sharpened. Show me. I used a crowbar from the equipment case to pry open the crate. Inside, packed in custom foam, was a jade sculpture. Tang Dynasty, or at least claimed to be. The kind of piece that belonged in a national museum, not a private warehouse. I lifted it carefully, examining the surface under one of the photography lights. The jade was real, high quality, but the carving style was wrong. Too precise, too uniform. The wear patterns didn't match centuries of handling. This is less than 5 years old, I said. Someone is manufacturing Tang Dynasty pieces using period-appropriate materials. They're good, museum-quality forgeries, but the proportions are off by millimeters. A casual observer would never notice. But you did. My mother spent 10 years studying Tang Dynasty jade. She taught me to see the difference between historically accurate and historically genuine. I set the sculpture down carefully. This piece is worth about $50,000 as a contemporary artwork. As a Tang Dynasty artifact, it's worth $20 million. Taejun photographed the sculpture from multiple angles, his movements efficient, practiced. Victoria's family is scheduled to donate a major collection of Chinese antiquities to the Metropolitan Museum next month. A tax write-off worth $80 million. The implications clicked into place. If even one piece in that donation is proven fake, the entire collection gets scrutinized. The museum pulls the donation. Victoria's family loses the tax benefit and faces fraud charges. He looked at me over the camera. And their reputation is destroyed permanently. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not fear, recognition. This was how Taejun fought. Not with violence, but with information. With proof. With the kind of methodical destruction that left no room for recovery. How many pieces has she promised to donate? 43. He lowered the camera. You're going to examine every single one. By the time the 6 hours ended, I documented 37 pieces. 23 were forgeries or stolen goods. The rest were questionable at best. My hands ached from holding examination tools. My eyes burned from the harsh lights, and I felt hollowed out by the sheer scale of the fraud I'd uncovered. Taejun packed the equipment in silence, methodical and precise. When everything was loaded back in the car, he turned to me. You did excellent work tonight. I exposed a criminal operation. You gave me a weapon. His hand found the small of my back, guiding me toward the exit. Victoria Han has spent 5 years building a reputation as a legitimate collector and philanthropist. In 6 hours, you've given me everything I need to destroy that reputation completely. We stepped out into the pre-dawn darkness. The fog had lifted, leaving the air cold and clear. When will you use it? I asked. When she makes her move against us. Taejun opened the car door for me. She will, Rachel. She saw us together at the gallery. She knows you're a threat. She'll try to eliminate that threat. And when she does? He smiled, that dangerous expression that never reached his eyes. We'll show her that some threats can't be eliminated. They can only destroy you for trying. The car pulled away from the warehouse. Through the window, I watched the building disappear into the industrial landscape, indistinguishable from everything around it. Inside, evidence of Victoria's crimes waited in the dark. Evidence I'd helped create. Evidence that made me complicit in whatever came next. I looked at Taejun. He was reviewing my photographs, his expression intense, focused, planning his next move. What have I become? I asked quietly. He looked up, and for a moment, something almost human flickered in his eyes. Dangerous, he said. Finally. The nightmare pulled me awake at 2 in the morning. Julian's face on that stage, Victoria's smile sharp as glass, 300 people watching me shatter. Except in the dream, when I looked down at my hands, they were covered in paint. Red, wet, dripping onto marble floors that reflected my face back at me, distorted and unrecognizable. I sat up, heart racing, the black diamond heavy on my finger even in the darkness. Taejun's penthouse was silent. I'd been here for a week now, and I still wasn't used to the quiet. No street noise, no neighbors, nothing but the whisper of climate control and the distant hum of the city far below. I pulled on a robe and left my room, drawn by a light I could see under the door at the end of the hallway. Not Taejun's bedroom. I'd learned that was on the opposite side of the penthouse. This was the room I wasn't supposed to enter without permission. The door was slightly ajar. I should have gone back to bed, should have respected the boundary. But I'd spent a week watching Taejun operate with mechanical precision, never showing emotion, never revealing anything beneath the controlled exterior. And I was curious about what he kept locked away. I pushed the door open slowly. The room was a library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined 3 walls, filled with books in multiple languages. But it wasn't a showpiece. These books were worn, read, loved. The 4th wall was glass, overlooking the city, and in front of that window sat Taejun. He wore only black pants, no shirt, his back to me. And for the first time, I saw what he'd kept hidden beneath tailored suits and careful positioning. Scars. Dozens of them, crisscrossing his back in a pattern that made my breath catch. Some were thin, precise, knife wounds. Others were ragged, torn, something worse. They caught the dim light like a map of violence written on skin. "You should be asleep." His voice was quiet, no accusation in it. He hadn't turned around. "So should you." "I don't sleep much." He reached for a glass on the table beside him. Whiskey, judging by the color. Bad habit. I stepped into the room, closing the door behind me. "How did you know I was there?" "I always know." He finally turned, and I saw his face was different in the darkness. Softer somehow, or maybe just tired. "You walked past my door first, hesitated, then came here. You were curious." "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "It's fine." He gestured to another chair near the window. "You can't sleep either. We might as well be awake together." I sat, pulling my robe tighter. From this angle, I could see a book open on his lap, poetry in what looked like Korean. "What are you reading?" Han Yong-un, a poet who wrote about resistance and longing during the Japanese occupation. Taejun closed the book carefully, setting it aside. My grandmother used to read his work to me. She said that understanding pain required understanding beauty first. It was the first personal thing he'd ever told me, the first crack in the armor. Was she right? I don't know. I understood pain very young. Beauty took longer. He took a drink, his eyes on the city lights. "What woke you?" "Nightmares. The usual ones." I looked at the black diamond on my finger, except now I'm the one covered in blood. Metaphorical blood. Does that make it better? No. He refilled his glass from a bottle on the side table, then poured a second and offered it to me. But it means you're starting to understand what we're really doing. That makes you less dangerous to yourself. I took the glass. The whiskey was expensive, smooth, burned in the right way. "Tell me about the scars." Taejun was quiet for a long moment. In the darkness, with the city spread out beneath us, he looked younger, more human. "Which ones?" "All of them." He smiled, but it was sad, distant. "That would take all night." "We have all night." He considered this, studying me with an intensity that made me want to look away. Then he stood, moving to stand by the window. The scars on his back were more visible now, illuminated by the city lights. My father ran a small shipping business. Legitimate, legal, boring. He believed that hard work and honesty would build a future for his family. Taejun's voice was flat, reciting facts. When I was 15, a larger organization decided they wanted his routes, his warehouses, his business. He refused to sell. I didn't need him to finish the story. I could see it in the set of his shoulders, the tension that never quite left him. They came to our home, made an example. My mother, my sister. He stopped, drank. I was at school. By the time I got there, it was over. My father was still alive, barely. He died holding my hand, apologizing for not being stronger. The whiskey turned sour in my mouth. Tae-jun. The scars came later. After I spent 5 years learning how to be stronger than my father, how to build something that couldn't be taken, how to become the thing that other people feared. He turned to face me, and his eyes were empty, ancient. Every scar is a lesson. Every lesson cost blood, mine or someone else's. I set down my glass, stood, walked to where he stood by the window. Up close, I could see the scars more clearly. One along his shoulder blade, thick and raised. Another across his ribs, thin as a wire. Who did this? I touched the one on his shoulder gently. Someone who underestimated me. His voice was quiet. He won't make that mistake again. Because you killed him? Because I made him wish I had. He didn't move away from my touch, but he didn't lean into it either. This is what you're allied with, Rachel. This is what wears that ring on your finger. I'm not a hero. I'm not saving you out of nobility. I'm using you to destroy my enemies, and I'm using your rage to make you complicit in that destruction. I know. Do you? He turned to face me fully, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. Do you understand that when this is over, you won't be the woman who walked into that opera house? You'll be someone who helped dismantle Victoria's empire, who testified against powerful people, who made yourself a target for every person who loses money when she falls. Yes. I didn't step back. I understand. And you're still here. I'm still here. Something shifted in his expression. The careful control cracked just slightly, and I saw something raw beneath it. Not vulnerability exactly, but recognition, like he was seeing me as something other than a weapon for the first time. Why? The question was barely a whisper. Because I don't have anywhere else to go. Because the woman I was before died on that stage. I touched his face, the same way he'd taught me that first night, except this wasn't performance. This was real. Because you're the only person who looked at me after I was destroyed and saw someone worth rebuilding. His hand came up, covering mine against his face. His skin was warm, alive. I didn't rebuild you. I just gave you permission to become what you already were. And what's that? Dangerous. Brilliant. Unbreakable. His other hand found my waist, the gesture familiar from our public performances, except now there was no audience, no cameras, just us in the darkness. You were always this person, Rachel. Julian just convinced you to hide it. The words unlocked something in my chest. Not relief, not forgiveness, but acceptance. I had changed. I was changing, and maybe that wasn't something to mourn. Can I ask you something? I said quietly. Yes. Are we really going to destroy them, completely? Yes. No hesitation, no doubt. Victoria's family will be investigated, charged, convicted. Their assets will be seized. Their reputation will be dust. Julian will lose everything, his foundation, his name, his future in this city. Tae-jun's fingers spread against my lower back, pressing me closer. They will spend the rest of their lives remembering the moment they underestimated you. And us? After it's over? The question hung between us, heavy with implications neither of us had acknowledged before. The contract was supposed to be clean, transactional, but standing here in the darkness, his scars visible, my walls crumbling, nothing felt clean anymore. I don't know, Tae-jun admitted, and for the first time, I heard uncertainty in his voice. I've never had a partner before, never wanted one. This was supposed to be strategic. And now? He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching my face. Now it's complicated. I laughed, the sound surprising both of us. That's an understatement. Rachel. He said my name like he was testing it, tasting it. I need you to understand something. When this started, you were a means to an end, a brilliant expert I could use to achieve my goals. But you're not just useful, you're... He stopped, struggling with words that didn't come easily to him. When you worked in that warehouse, documenting Victoria's forgeries, you weren't scared. You weren't hesitant. You were alive, present, extraordinary. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. I've collected beautiful things my entire life. Art, weapons, information. But I've never seen anything as compelling as you when you're being exactly who you are. The confession hung in the air between us, vulnerable and dangerous. Tae-jun, don't. His hand tightened on my waist. Don't say anything, not yet, just... He paused, and I saw him make a decision. Stay here, tonight. Not in your room, here, with me. It wasn't a demand, it was a question. An offering. I could have walked away, could have retreated to my room, maintained the professional distance, kept our partnership clean and strategic. But I'd stopped being that careful person the moment I put on his ring. Okay, I said. I'll stay. Relief flickered across his face, so brief I almost missed it. He led me to a leather couch near the bookshelves, sat, and pulled me down beside him. Not sexual, not aggressive, just close. His arm around my shoulders, my head against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. Tell me about your mother, he said quietly, about the gallery. So I did. Told him about growing up surrounded by art, learning to see the truth beneath beautiful lies, watching my mother build something meaningful in a world that dismissed her. Told him about the cancer, the slow deterioration, the way she'd made me promise to protect what she'd built. And he listened. Really listened, his fingers tracing absent patterns on my shoulder, his breathing steady and calm. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, she would be proud of you. Would she? I'm helping you destroy people. You're protecting her legacy, fighting for what she built, using the skills she taught you. His voice was firm. That's not destruction, that's war. And in war, the people who hesitate are the ones who lose everything. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was finally fighting the way my mother had taught me, with precision, skill, and absolute commitment. Or maybe I was just too far gone to see the difference anymore. Either way, I stayed there in the darkness, wrapped in Tae-jun's arms, surrounded by books and scars and whiskey, until the sky began to lighten outside the window. And for the first time since the opera house, I didn't dream of drowning. I dreamed of fire. The message came 3 days later, forwarded through an art authentication service I'd used before the opera house. Professional, innocent, exactly the kind of communication no one would question. Rachel, I need to speak with you privately. It's about a piece that requires your expertise. Meet me at the Gramercy Hotel, Suite 1804, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. This is professional, not personal. Julian. I stared at the message on my phone, sitting in Tae-jun's library, where I'd spent most of the past 3 nights. He'd given me a key, told me to treat it as my space. The intimacy we'd found in the darkness had settled into something neither of us had named, but both of us protected. Let me guess. Tae-jun's voice came from the doorway. Julian wants to meet. I turned. He was dressed for a meeting, all sharp lines and calculated menace in a charcoal suit. But his eyes were soft when they landed on me, the way they only were when we were alone. How did you know? Because Victoria is getting desperate. The museum board postponed accepting her family's donation pending routine verification. Her father's shipping company is under investigation for customs irregularities. He crossed to where I sat, reading the message over my shoulder. They need leverage against me, and they think you're the weakness they can exploit. I could ignore it. You could. His hand found my shoulder, fingers warm through the thin silk of my blouse. Or you could go. Play the role of the conflicted ex-fiancé who still has feelings for him. See what he's really after. I looked up at him. You want me to become bait. I want you to become the trap. He pulled out his phone, began typing. Julian believes he knows you, the woman who wanted so desperately to belong that she'd compromise herself to keep what she had. He'll expect that version of you to walk through that door. And instead? Instead, he gets someone who's learned to weaponize his assumptions. Taejun showed me his screen, a message to someone named Minjun. You'll wear a wire. My people will be in the adjacent suite, recording everything. Whatever Julian offers, whatever he threatens, we'll have documentation. What if he actually just wants authentication work? Taejun's smile was sharp, humorless. Men like Julian don't reach out to their ex-fiancés for professional consultations. He wants something. Our job is to make him think he's getting it while we take everything from him. The Gramercy Hotel was exactly the kind of place Julian would choose. Expensive, but not ostentatious. Exclusive, but not flashy. Old money discretion wrapped in marble and mahogany. I wore gray. A dress Julian had once told me made me look appropriately professional. Conservative heels, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. The woman he remembered, or close enough. The wire was invisible, tucked against my skin beneath the dress. Minjun had installed it himself, his hands clinical and efficient, while Taejun watched with the focus of a man memorizing details for later retribution. Remember, Taejun had said before I left, his fingers adjusting the collar of my dress with unnecessary precision. You're conflicted. You're not sure about us. You miss the stability Julian represented. Give him hope, but make him work for it. And if he touches me? Something dark flashed in Taejun's eyes. Then I'll be there in 30 seconds, and the recording will be the least of his problems. Now I stood outside suite 1804, steadying my breath, remembering who I was supposed to be. Not the woman who spent nights in Taejun's library, not the expert who documented Victoria's crimes. The old Rachel, the one Julian had molded and dismissed. I knocked. Julian opened the door immediately, as if he'd been waiting right there. He wore casual clothes, expensive sweater, designer jeans, the outfit he used to wear on weekends when we'd pretend to be a normal couple. Calculated intimacy. Rachel, thank you for coming. His smile was warm, practiced. Please, come in. The suite was elegant. Living area with a view of the park, a bedroom visible through an open door, champagne chilling in a bucket by the window. A seduction scene, or the appearance of one. You said this was professional. I stayed near the door, letting uncertainty show in my posture. It is, mostly. He gestured to the sofa. Please, sit. Can I get you a drink? Water is fine. He poured from a crystal pitcher, handed me a glass, sat across from me with careful attention to distance, non-threatening, respectful, everything he hadn't been at the opera house. I owe you an apology, he began. The way I ended things, the public nature of it, that was cruel. Victoria convinced me it was necessary for optics, but I should have refused. You deserved better. The words were perfect, rehearsed. I let my fingers tighten on the glass. Why are you telling me this now? Because I've been watching you, seeing you with Kang Taejun. He leaned forward, concern etched on his face. Rachel, do you know who he really is? What he's involved in? He's been good to me. He's a criminal. His organization runs illegal operations across half the city. Protection rackets, smuggling, worse. Julian's voice dropped to urgent sincerity. The only reason he's interested in you is because of your expertise. He's using you. I looked away, let my jaw tighten. Playing the part. That's not true. Isn't it? He approached you right after the opera house, didn't he? When you were vulnerable, angry. He offered you revenge, resources, everything you'd lost. Julian stood, moved to sit beside me on the sofa. Not touching, but close. Rachel, I know him. Victoria's family has been dealing with his interference for months. He's trying to destroy our partnership, and he's using you to do it. Why would he need me for that? Because you're brilliant. You can authenticate pieces, verify provenance, access collections that he can't touch legally. Julian's hand hovered near mine, not quite making contact. He's having you examine Victoria's acquisitions, isn't he? Looking for problems, inconsistencies, anything he can use against her family. I didn't answer. Let the silence be confirmation. I thought so. Julian's voice softened, became gentle. Rachel, whatever he's promised you, it's a lie. When he's done using your expertise, you'll be discarded. Worse, you'll be implicated in whatever crimes he's planning. Your reputation, your career, everything will be destroyed. And what do you suggest I do? Julian reached into his pocket, pulled out a flash drive. Copy everything you've documented for him. Every photograph, every analysis, every piece of evidence he's having you compile. Give it to me. There it was, the real reason for this meeting. Why? Because Victoria's family has connections in federal law enforcement. If we can prove Tae-jun is conducting illegal surveillance, using stolen information, building a case through criminal means, we can have him arrested before he destroys innocent people. Julian pressed the flash drive into my hand. You'd be protected. Immunity in exchange for testimony. Your career would be intact, your reputation restored. I looked at the flash drive, let my expression waver between temptation and doubt. Julian, I don't know. I still care about you. He finally took my hand, and I felt Tae-jun's ring press against both our palms. I know I handled things badly. I was weak, let Victoria's family push me into decisions I regret. But I can make this right. I can protect you from Tae-jun, get you away from that world before it destroys you. You want me to betray him? I want you to save yourself. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. Rachel, please, trust me one more time. Let me fix what I broke. I looked at him, really looked. Saw the calculation behind the concern, the agenda hiding beneath the apology. He didn't care about saving me. He cared about getting the evidence that could destroy Victoria's investigation before Tae-jun weaponized it. And he thought I was still naive enough to believe him. I need time to think about this, I said, pulling my hand back carefully. It's a lot. Of course, I understand. Julian stood, giving me space, playing the gentleman. But, Rachel, time is something we don't have much of. Tae-jun is moving quickly. If you're going to get out, it needs to be soon. I stood as well, clutching the flash drive. How do I contact you? The number on the drive. It's secure, encrypted. When you're ready, when you've copied the files, text me. I'll arrange the handoff, make sure you're protected. He walked me to the door, his hand light on my lower back. And Rachel? Don't tell Tae-jun about this meeting. If he suspects you're wavering, there's no telling what he might do. I nodded, let vulnerability show in my expression. I won't. I need to be sure I'm making the right choice. You are. He squeezed my shoulder. I promise. The door closed behind me. I walked to the elevator, maintaining the facade until I was inside and the doors closed. Then I looked directly at the emergency camera I knew Min-jun was monitoring. Did you get all that? The elevator stopped on the 18th floor. The doors opened to reveal Tae-jun, his expression carved from ice. Behind him, Min-jun packed away recording equipment. Every word. Tae-jun stepped into the elevator, and the doors closed, sealing us in private space. He's even more arrogant than I thought. He thinks I'm still the woman he controlled. I held up the flash drive. He gave me this to copy your files. Which you'll do. Tae-jun took the drive, examined it. Min-jun will load it with documents that appear legitimate, but are actually fabrications. Enough to make Victoria's legal team think they have ammunition, enough to make them move prematurely. I leaned against the elevator wall, suddenly exhausted. How did you know he'd try this? Because desperate men follow patterns. Julian spent 3 years manipulating you. He believes he understands how your mind works, how to push your buttons. Taejun's hand found my face, tilting it up to meet his eyes. But he's working from old intelligence. He has no idea who you've become. And who have I become? Someone who can lie to his face without flinching. Someone who can play weak while setting a trap. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, the gesture tender despite the violence in his words. Someone who's mine, not his. The possessiveness should have bothered me. A month ago, it would have. But now, after nights in his library and days building our case, it felt like recognition. When do I give him the drive? Tomorrow. We'll stage it at a public location, the museum cafe. Cameras everywhere, witnesses, completely innocent. Taejun's smile was predatory. And the moment he accepts that drive, he becomes complicit in receiving stolen corporate intelligence. A federal crime with a paper trail will provide to the very investigators Victoria's family thinks they control. You're framing him. I'm letting him frame himself. All he had to do was leave you alone. Taejun's voice went cold, final. He chose to drag you back into his schemes. Now he gets to face the consequences. The elevator reached the lobby. Before the doors opened, Taejun pulled me close, his lips brushing my temple. Affection and threat combined. You did perfectly, he whispered. Now let's finish this. Outside, the city glittered with afternoon light. Somewhere in Suite 1804, Julian was probably celebrating his successful recruitment of his broken ex-fiancé. He had no idea he'd just signed his own destruction. And I felt absolutely nothing watching him do it. The spring gala at the Metropolitan Museum was the city's most prestigious charity event. More exclusive than the Opera House, more powerful than any gallery opening, it was where empires were built and destroyed over cocktails and carefully orchestrated bidding wars. 200 of the wealthiest, most influential people in the country. One night, $50 million in art up for auction to benefit the museum's acquisition fund. And Victoria Han's family was donating the centerpiece, a collection of Tang Dynasty jade pieces valued at $20 million. The same pieces I'd proven were forgeries 3 weeks ago. I stood in front of the mirror in Taejun's bedroom, adjusting the dress he'd had made for tonight. Deep crimson silk that looked like blood in certain light, cut to perfection, designed to be remembered. The black diamond on my finger caught the light like a warning. You look like vengeance. Taejun's voice came from behind me. He'd been watching from the doorway, and I hadn't noticed. I was getting worse at maintaining awareness around him, or maybe just more comfortable. That's the idea, isn't it? He crossed to me, his hands finding my waist, his reflection joining mine in the mirror. He wore black, as always, but tonight there was something different in his expression. Not just focused, triumphant. Like a hunter who'd finally cornered his prey. Tonight ends it, he said quietly. Everything we've built, everything you've sacrificed, it all comes together in that room. Are you sure the evidence will hold? I'm sure. His lips brushed my shoulder. The museum's authentication committee has had your reports for a week. They've conducted their own analysis. Every piece Victoria's family planned to donate is either forged or stolen. The FBI has been building a case based on the documents Julian accepted from you, documents that tie him directly to the money laundering operation. And Victoria? We'll watch her empire crumble in real time, in front of everyone who matters, with no way to stop it. Taejun's arms tightened around me. They wanted to destroy you publicly. Tonight, we return the favor. The Metropolitan Museum glowed like a palace. Red carpet, photographers, television cameras broadcasting to the art world. This wasn't just a charity event, it was a coronation of cultural power. Our car pulled up, and I felt Taejun's hand find mine. Ready? I looked at him. At the man who'd offered me revenge wrapped in a contract, who'd taught me to weaponize my expertise, who'd held me in the darkness while I transformed into someone I barely recognized. Yes, I said. Let's finish this. We stepped out into the flash of cameras. Unlike the gallery opening weeks ago, this time I didn't hesitate. I stood tall, let the photographers capture the crimson dress, the black diamond, the way Taejun's hand never left my waist. We were a declaration, a threat made flesh. Inside, the museum had been transformed. The Temple of Dender served as the backdrop, ancient stone illuminated by thousands of candles. Auction items were displayed throughout the galleries, each piece more spectacular than the last. And in the center, in a case of bulletproof glass, sat Victoria's Tang Dynasty jade collection. The collection that would destroy her. Julian saw us first. He stood near the bar, and when his eyes landed on me, I saw calculation, satisfaction. He thought I'd done it, thought I'd betrayed Taejun, handed over the evidence, sealed his protection. He had no idea the flash drive had been filled with manufactured documents that traced money from Victoria's legitimate businesses directly to shell companies he'd created. Evidence that made him look like the mastermind, not the accomplice. Victoria appeared at his side, resplendent in white, her smile predatory. They dressed for victory, positioned themselves at the center of the room to receive congratulations on their generous donation. "Showtime!" Taejun murmured against my ear. We crossed the room. Conversations quieted in our wake, the crowd sensing something about to happen. By the time we reached Julian and Victoria, a circle had formed around us, the same kind of audience that had watched my destruction at the Opera House. "Julian! Victoria!" Taejun's voice carried perfectly, pitched for the crowd. "Congratulations on your donation! Such generous philanthropy!" Victoria's smile was sharp. "Thank you, Taejun. It's rare to see you at these events. What brings you out tonight?" "My fiancé has an interest in Tang Dynasty artifacts. She's been studying your collection extensively." His hand tightened on my waist. "In fact, she has some fascinating insights to share. Rachel?" All eyes turned to me. This was it, the moment I'd been building towards since the night in the rain, since the warehouse documentation, since I'd put on his ring and agreed to become dangerous. I looked at Victoria, then at Julian. Let them see the woman they'd underestimated. "The jade collection you're donating is remarkable," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Particularly remarkable because several pieces are modern forgeries, created within the last decade, using historically accurate materials but contemporary carving techniques." The silence was absolute. Victoria's smile froze. "I'm sorry, what?" "The dragon pendant, for example. Tang Dynasty jade carvers used specific tools that left microscopic striations in predictable patterns. Your piece has none of those markers. It was carved with modern diamond-tipped tools." I pulled out my phone, displayed photographs I'd taken in the warehouse. "I documented 37 pieces in your private collection. 23 are forgeries. The museum's authentication committee has confirmed my findings." "This is absurd." Victoria's voice was ice. "These pieces have impeccable provenance." "Falsified provenance." Taejun's voice cut through her protest. "Documented through a network of shell companies and fraudulent galleries. The FBI has been investigating your family's art acquisition practices for 3 months. They've traced over $300 million in laundered funds through your legitimate businesses." Julian stepped forward, his face pale. "You can't prove any of this." "We already have." I met his eyes, let him see what I'd become. "When you accepted that flash drive from me, you received documents that trace the money laundering operation directly to accounts you control. You signed for them, Julian. There's video footage, digital records, your fingerprints on the drive itself." Understanding dawned in his expression. Horror followed immediately after. "You set me up." "No!" Taejun's smile was lethal. "You tried to use Rachel one more time. You just didn't realize she'd stopped being someone you could use." The crowd had grown, drawn by the confrontation. I recognized museum board members, journalists, federal investigators I'd been told would be here. Everyone who needed to witness this moment. Victoria's composure cracked. "You have no idea what you've done. My family—" "Your family will be dismantled systematically. Assets seized, accounts frozen, operations shut down. Taejun's voice was clinical, final. Your father is already in federal custody. Your warehouses are being raided as we speak. And this donation, this public attempt to legitimize your crimes through generosity, is now evidence in a racketeering investigation. Rachel, please. Julian's voice cracked. We were together for 3 years. You can't. I can. I stepped away from Taejun, moved closer to Julian, close enough to see the desperation in his eyes. You humiliated me in front of 300 people. You tried to steal my mother's gallery. You used my expertise to legitimize Victoria's crimes, then threw me away when I'd served my purpose. I held up my left hand, let the black diamond catch the light. This ring isn't a prop. It's not a performance. It's a promise that people like you don't get to destroy people like me without consequences. Miss Han, Mr. Whitmore. Federal agents materialized from the crowd, badges visible. You're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and trafficking in stolen artifacts. The handcuffs clicked into place with a sound that echoed through the marble halls. Victoria fought, her composure shattering completely. This is a mistake! My lawyers have been notified. The lead agent's voice was bored, professional. You'll have the opportunity to make your call from the federal building. Julian didn't struggle. He just stared at me, realization finally hitting him. This was all planned. From the beginning. From the moment you left me standing on that stage. I didn't look away. You created this version of me. You should be proud. She's everything you taught her to be. Ruthless, strategic, willing to do whatever it takes to win. They were led away, Victoria still protesting, Julian silent with shock. The crowd parted for them, whispers building into a roar of speculation and scandal. When they were gone, the room erupted. Journalists surrounded me, questions flying. Museum officials wanted statements. Federal investigators needed to confirm details. But Taejun's hand found mine, his fingers lacing through my own. He pulled me close, his lips near my ear. We did it, he said quietly. It's over. I looked around the room, at the people who'd watched me be destroyed, who now watched me emerge victorious. At the jade collection in its glass case, forever tainted by the scandal. At the empty space where Julian and Victoria had stood moments ago. No, I said, turning to face him. It's just beginning. His eyes searched mine, reading the truth there. The contract was fulfilled. Julian was destroyed. Victoria's empire was ash. I was free to walk away, reclaim my gallery, rebuild my life as the expert who'd exposed the biggest art fraud case in a decade. But walking away meant leaving him, leaving this, leaving the version of myself that had been forged in darkness and danger. Rachel. I kissed him. Not for show, not for the cameras, not because the contract required it. Because in the past month, somewhere between the warehouse and the library and the moments before dawn when we'd stopped pretending we were just allies, I'd stopped wanting to leave. When I pulled back, his expression was unguarded for the first time in public. Raw. Real. The contract is fulfilled, I said quietly. But I'm not walking away. You should. His hand came up, cupping my face. You've done what you set out to do. You don't owe me anything more. I know. I covered his hand with mine, felt the black diamond press between our palms. But I want more. Not because of revenge or contracts or strategy. Because when I'm with you, I'm not trying to be someone I'm not. I'm just me. The dangerous, unbreakable version of me. Something shifted in his expression. Relief. Wonder. Something almost like joy. Then stay, he said. Not as part of a contract. As my partner, my equal, the woman who helped me dismantle an empire and might be the only person in this city I actually trust. And the ring? He looked at the black diamond, then back at my face. Still yours, but now it means something different. Not a contract, a choice. Around us, the gala continued. The The scandal would dominate headlines for months. Victoria's family would face trial. Julian would lose everything. My mother's gallery was already being transferred back to my name. The fraudulent mortgage dissolved. I'd won. Completely. Absolutely. But standing there in Taejun's arms, I realized the victory wasn't the destruction of my enemies. It was the discovery of who I became when I stopped being afraid of my own power. "Yes," I said. "I'll stay." His smile was genuine this time, no calculation behind it, just pure, unguarded emotion. "Good," he said, "because I wasn't planning to let you go anyway." We left the museum together, hand in hand, while the city's elite tried to make sense of what they'd witnessed. Behind us, Julian and Victoria's world burned. Ahead, something new was being built, and this time, I was the architect. 3 months later, I stood on the balcony of Taejun's penthouse, our penthouse, watching the sunset over a city that had tried to break me and failed. The headlines had been relentless. Art world scandal rocks elite families. Federal investigation exposes billion-dollar fraud network. Rising expert Rachel Chen instrumental in bringing down criminal empire. Victoria's father was awaiting trial, facing 40 years in federal prison. Her family's assets had been seized, their businesses dissolved, their names synonymous with fraud and corruption. Victoria herself had taken a plea deal, 15 years in exchange for testimony against the larger network. Julian had gotten 20. His foundation was bankrupt, his family's reputation destroyed, his future reduced to a cell in a minimum security facility where he'd have plenty of time to regret underestimating the woman he'd humiliated. My mother's gallery had been restored to me, free and clear. More than that, it had become the most sought-after authentication service in the country. Museums, collectors, federal agencies, they all wanted the expert who'd expose the Han Whitmore conspiracy. I'd hired a staff of 6, turned away more clients than I accepted, and rebuilt my mother's legacy into something that would outlast us both. But none of that was why I was smiling. "You're thinking too much again." Taejun's voice came from behind me, followed by his arms wrapping around my waist. He'd showered after his meeting, smelled like cedar and soap, was dressed down in just black pants and a white shirt, sleeves rolled up. The version of him only I got to see. "I'm allowed to think." "You're allowed to relax. The war is over. We won." His chin rested on my shoulder, his breath warm against my neck. "You're supposed to be enjoying the spoils of victory." I turned in his arms, facing him. The sunset cast golden light across his face, softening the sharp edges I'd memorized over countless nights. "Is that what this is? Spoils?" "What would you call it?" I looked past him, into the penthouse. The library where I spent most evenings now, surrounded by books in languages I was learning to read. The kitchen where we'd learned to cook together, a domestic ritual neither of us had expected to enjoy. The bedroom, where the careful distance we'd maintained, had dissolved into something consuming, necessary, real. "Home," I said finally. "I'd call it home." Something shifted in his expression, that rare vulnerability that only appeared when we were alone. I never thought I'd have that. After my family, after everything, I built walls that were supposed to be permanent. And then? And then you walked into my life, covered in rain and rage, wearing another man's diamonds like a leash. His hand came up, fingers tracing the line of my jaw. You were supposed to be a weapon I could aim and fire, a means to an end. But you were sharper than I expected, more resilient, more— He paused, searching for words. You matched me, not in methods but in will, in refusal to stay broken. I've collected beautiful things my entire life, Rachel, but I've never met anyone I wanted to keep. Until me. Until you. He pulled me closer, eliminating the space between us. The contract is over. You don't owe me anything. You could leave right now, take your gallery, your reputation, your victory, and build a life that doesn't involve my world. I could, but you won't. It wasn't a question. He knew me too well now, could read the decision in my eyes before I spoke it. I spent 3 years trying to fit into Julian's world, making myself smaller to match his vision of who I should be. Then, I spent a month with you, becoming someone bigger, sharper, more myself than I'd ever been. I touched his face, felt the tension in his jaw. Why would I leave the only place I've ever felt like I belonged? His eyes closed briefly, and when they opened, I saw everything he usually kept locked away. Relief. Gratitude. Something deeper that neither of us had named yet, but both of us felt. I love you. The words came out rough, unpracticed. I don't know when it happened. Somewhere between the warehouse and the library and watching you destroy Julian without flinching. I love you, and I don't know what to do with that. My heart stuttered. In all our time together, through all the danger and intimacy and transformation, he'd never said it. Never let himself be that vulnerable. You could start by accepting that I love you too. I smiled at his expression. Surprise, wonder, something almost like fear. Did you really think I stayed for the penthouse? I don't know what I thought. His arms tightened around me, desperate now, possessive. Rachel. I know. I kissed him, soft and slow, a promise instead of a performance. I know you're dangerous. I know your world is built on violence and leverage and power. I know that loving you means accepting all of that. And you do? Accept it? I accept you. I pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. All of you. The man who offered me revenge, the one who held me in the dark, the one who taught me how to be dangerous. You didn't save me, Taejun. You gave me the tools to save myself. That's better than any fairy tale. He kissed me then, deep and consuming, the kind of kiss that erased everything else. When we finally broke apart, the sun had set completely, leaving the city illuminated by artificial light. So, what happens now? He asked. We've destroyed our enemies, built our empires. What's left? I looked out at the city, at the lights spreading to the horizon. Somewhere down there, my gallery was thriving. Somewhere, Victoria and Julian were paying for their crimes. Somewhere, the woman I'd been at the opera house was a distant memory, replaced by someone stronger, sharper, unbreakable. Now we build something new. I turned back to him. Together. Not because we need each other for revenge or survival, but because we choose each other. Every day. An empire built on choice instead of necessity. Is that so bad? No. His smile was genuine, unguarded. It's perfect. We stood there on the balcony, wrapped in each other, watching the city that had tried to break us both. The city we'd conquered, not through violence, but through strategy, patience, and the willingness to become exactly what we needed to be. The black diamond on my finger caught the light from the penthouse, no longer a symbol of a contract, but a reminder of transformation. I'd put it on as Rachel Chen, the woman who'd been destroyed at the opera house. I wore it now as someone else entirely, someone who'd learned that power wasn't about fitting into other people's worlds, it was about building your own. Come inside, Taejun said quietly. I want to show you something. He led me to his office, our office now, with space cleared for my authentication equipment and research materials. On the desk sat a velvet box I'd never seen before. What is this? Open it. Inside was a second ring. Not black diamond this time, but a band of platinum inscribed with Korean characters I was still learning to read. What does it say? Unbreakable. His voice was soft. That's what you are. What we are together. He took the ring, held it beside the black diamond already on my finger. The first ring was a contract. This one is a promise. That I choose you, every day, for as long as you'll have me. I let him slide the band onto my finger, watched it settle beside the black diamond like they'd always belonged together. Yes, I said simply. To all of it. To you. To us. To whatever empire we build next. He kissed me again, and I tasted possibility, future, everything we'd become and everything we'd yet to discover. Outside, the city glittered with promise. Inside, we'd built something that couldn't be taken, couldn't be destroyed, couldn't be diminished by anyone's expectations. We'd built ourselves, together, and that was the greatest empire of all.